everybody. This is Shanice from Shifted. We've been hearing a lot about tariffs and trade wars, but how do these policies actually feel as an American living here in China? Are they worried about price hikes? Do their opinions differ from their family members back home? Or is it all just background noise? We decided to hit the streets of Shanghai to find out.
I would just explain it in like the Chinese way, which is just like a border tax.
How would I explain tariffs to my mom?
It's a tax or like fee on imported goods from another place.
Like sales tax on steroids. That's probably the simplest way to explain it.
My mom actually believes that the tariffs are a good thing because she believes that they will bring more jobs back to the U.S.
Sometimes in the US, people don't even understand what a tariff is.
Back in America, a lot of people think that China is paying the tariff when it's really us paying extra on imported goods.
Probably I'd explain it to her that the tariffs are actually going to cause a short-term loss of jobs, and I do not believe that those jobs are going to come back in the long term.
The citizens pay it, not the place that the tariff is on. I think that's what makes it confusing for some people.
Ooh, tariffs haven't really affected my life here, I would say.
My family asked me about some tariffs the other day, and right now it's not affecting me.
They haven't yet that I know of. I think I only rarely buy things that are imported.
My wife works here for an American company, and all the products that she sold before here were made in the U.S. in California or Massachusetts. And it's significantly changed now the way that they do business here. So it's caused some difficulties here for us just from a personal standpoint.
Well, they've affected my life in China in the sense that it's causing me stress and anxiety reading about what's happening back home and knowing that my family members back in the US are having to pay extra for things.
I don't believe that they have yet. I definitely think that it will probably affect me the longer I stay here or even back home, but specifically here if a trade war happens.
How many American products do I buy in China? I haven't bought any American products.
I mean, besides like fast food.
Food is everything. Food, tech.
Very little, I would say.
Because I am an American, there are a few things that we buy here that probably someone who was Chinese would not buy. But the amount of products that we buy here that are made in America is very small compared to in the U.S. the amount of products that we buy in the U.S. that are made in China, which is the majority of products.
Gosh, I guess there aren't many because I eat peanut butter from New Zealand and my hummus comes from Australia. I probably would not buy or want to pay the full cost of most American products, especially when you add in the tariffs.
I don't know how many things are actually American made. Growing up in America, most items and everything is made in China. So if there was to be a trade war, I don't think there would be that many things that were more expensive.
Oh, for sure. So I started using Xiaohongshu a lot, and I just buy the things that the girls recommend on there.
Yeah, so I buy a lot of different local products, and some of those local products, what that means is that some people here who are international, they start creating their own different types of brands and products.
I've never really been like a labels person, like as far as brands.
I'm not a very brand conscious consumer. I'm more of a value conscious consumer.
Oftentimes it can be more cost effective to buy things here. One exception might be running shoes. I can get Hoka running shoes in the US a little cheaper than I can sometimes get them here. But that's because I buy older versions. But I do have a couple of Apple products, which are still expensive, but when they're made here and you buy them here, it's probably a bit less than buying them in the US, just because the economy, the scale of the economy.
I'm really into like tea and stuff. Back home, I used to put a lot of sugar and everything in my tea and use tea bags. Now I just buy the whole herbs, like the loose leaf. I think it's called loose leaf tea. So I plan on continuing that if I ever go back home. That is definitely something I've fully incorporated. I have it right now. I have tea with the loose leaf in it right now.
I think in the last few years, China has been trying to lower their reliance on U.S. imports. I do think America is like the biggest consumer in the world. Like on average, American citizens consume more than anyone else. So I do think it will have a negative effect.
Just going based off of social media, like the way I see people, and especially the guy, I can't think of his name, who's like, he represents a group of factories. And just seeing how he and other people like him are rising up and fighting this tariff war. They got the tools already.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think even before the tariffs, they were getting stronger. If you're familiar with the aircraft company, Comac, that made the C919 aircraft, and if you look at the e-cars here, the electric cars, the cars in China maybe 5 years ago had a so-so reputation. Now the cars here have a very good reputation.
I feel like that's possible because China has a larger consumer base. So if people here are purchasing more Chinese products, I think the domestic demand would be stronger. So from what I see, I think there's a lot more anxiety in the US right now than there is right here, at least in the middle of Shanghai.
I think people in the US are less sympathetic towards China. But my family is mostly like liberal, and I think they think it's just Trump's fault because it is like what he said he was gonna do, and then he did the thing. So I don't think they really blame China or anything for it. I think they like having buying things from China, like on Temu or like any of those apps and stuff.
Every day they're hearing something on the news about this. In my daily life, I'm not hearing this in my daily life because also for them, they're going to be impacted, the products they're actually receiving. So our conversation and also our thoughts about this is going to look different.
Oh, definitely. I have two brothers. My one brother owns a business, an IT business. He's very concerned about the tariff situation and the inflation situation. I have another brother who's very much a supporter of Trump, who sees it very differently. And these people, this is my brother, but these people actually think that the jobs are going to come back to the U.S.
I know my mom, my aunt in particular, they're very worried. They're also very worried, this is going a little off track, about cuts to Social Security and possible cuts to Medicare. And Medicaid, which would not affect them as directly, but the Social Security would be a big hit for them. So they have a lot of anxiety about that. If you go to a Walmart store in the US, and a lot of Americans shop at Walmart, probably at least half the products in Walmart are most likely from China, if not more than half. And those Walmart stores are usually in rural areas where a lot of people voted for this current government in the United States. So I'm very curious about how these people are going to feel when the prices of Walmart products skyrocket.
I've had people tell me, well, you don't know about their government, and you don't know. And I'm like, citizens seem pretty fine to me. People leave America at a much higher rate than they leave here, that I think they do.
I just feel like the US doesn't really talk about normal Chinese life that much.
When people are looking at the news, is it different from what I see here in China? Most definitely, because you have, ABC, NBC, all these different platforms, and it's more so on a Western type of platform. It makes sense because they're not here. But when you're in another place, it's going to be secondhand, third-hand information.
I don't watch a lot of news anymore, but the phone calls and the messages I get from my dad about things that are going on in China, I'm like, what news are you watching? I find that there's a bit of misinformation that happens.
Yeah, that's funny because sometimes I see in the news and I say, That's propaganda. The way that, like in the U.S., they say, "Oh, this is propaganda, Chinese propaganda," and then when I read the news here from the Western perspective, I say that's the Western propaganda.
I would say probably underestimate. I think the more recent news, I think people are becoming more enlightened about how much China is a part of our everyday lives. Like no matter where we are, just because it doesn't have a "Made in China" sticker on it, they have no idea like where all these things come from. So I think this is a very like educational period. Like I'm kind of glad that everybody's getting an opportunity to understand how everything comes together. So.
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. They overestimate the negative impact that they have on day-to-day life in the U.S. However, they underestimate the positive impact that they have. And I think a lot of that comes from where they consume their information news from. So I think it's both sides. Definitely. You wouldn't have been able to have those low interest rates in the U.S. without China manufacturing products and shipping them and selling them in the U.S. at a low cost. You wouldn't have been able to have those low interest rates in the U.S. without China manufacturing products and shipping them and selling them in the U.S. at a low cost.
Definitely.
Living in China? Definitely. Oh, definitely. And I believe that that's probably one of the reasons that many Americans don't have a good understanding of the effects of this trade war, tariff war, whatever you want to call it. I tell my brothers, my mother, everybody, come and visit China, see what it's really like. But there's people that still have that understanding of China from the 70s and 80s, that it's this big mystery. Come here and experience it. It's very interesting.
When you're on the ground somewhere and you actually get to know the people face to face, you realize, well, the average people you meet day to day are not the government. And same in the US. The average American is not the government.
Responsibility, no. Privilege, yes. I feel like it's a privilege to be able to like kind of bridge that gap. I pay for my own plane ticket.
Yeah, I do. I really do. Now I feel even more so that I need to almost be a defender of China because there's so much misunderstanding. People just want good job, a place to live, personal security. No one here wants to take over the U.S. I mean, it's ridiculous. I feel like I need to inform my fellow Americans. No, it's not really like that.
I do, because as someone who's spent a total of about 5.5 years living in China, I do think it's part of my responsibility, and not just to parrot what people want me to say in America or in China, but kind of like to find the middle road. And I feel like it's a good way to build bridges. And it's really interesting being here because we're kind of like on the ground peacekeepers, if you will. And the average person here is still really interested, in meeting Americans. And I don't feel like they're holding it against me, although in a way they have the right to. But the average person doesn't seem to hold what my government is doing against me personally, which is really nice.
I do. I think that there's a whole world out there, and people need to experience it for themselves and not just what people tell them, especially people who've never been there. Because I hear a lot of things about this place from people who've never been here.
I think Trump likes to do this thing where he's like, I'm gonna make life worse for you, but then I'm gonna make it better by taking it back. Like with the whole TikTok ban, where he's like, it was him that started the TikTok ban, and then he's the one that removed it and was like, see how good I am, guys.
I don't know. Honestly, with that, I'm not exactly sure. Even people who are next to Trump, they don't even know. So to ask me, what is that going to look like? I have no idea.
I would hope that it's all just political and that the pendulum will swing back very soon. The fact that tariffs create just more stress on the economy. And of course, economic stresses turn into personal stresses, and personal stresses turn into personal conflict, bloodshed, all of that stuff. So I would just hate to see it go that far.
It doesn't matter, because even if he only does it short term, the die has been cast, as we say. The trust factor is lost, okay? You don't know if in another 6 months, if something else is going to happen.
I feel like we've already hurt ourselves longer term, at least for the next couple years, because of all of the investors and companies being continually off balance and not knowing how can they possibly ever invest more in our country if he's constantly changing the message.
I feel that people should be more sympathetic toward China. Just realize that China is still a developing country, but that doesn't mean that people are, living in, as J.D. Vance said, peasants. That is such a derogatory and horrible thing to say about Chinese people.
I guess, to people back at home, we are a smaller world than what we are realizing, and that people who are making the products, whoever that may be, even if it's back at home, they are important. Everyone is important in this whole, the whole circle.
Get off from in front of your TVs and your social media and come outside. Come hang out in China. It's a lot of fun over here. Everybody's cool. It's probably one of the most soulful places.
I would say look beyond the headlines about China and Shanghai and what you might hear. Then try to really understand something about Chinese culture. And for people in China, look beyond the tariff headlines and try to continue to understand most Americans are not supportive of those tariffs. And so if we can look beyond each government's headlines, if you will, and actually learn more about the other culture and how the larger number of people really think and believe, then we can come to a truer understanding that will help us all in the end.
I'll tell you what, something I want to say to people of China, that I apologize for what our vice president said. And I just apologize to the people of China for his disrespect to them. And I would encourage the people in the United States to say that to him.
China's great. Travel the world. See it for yourself. I still love my people back home. I know I talked a lot of mess. I still love home. But yeah, travel the world, see for yourself.
If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Shifted for more on-the-ground stories straight from China.